I want to ask you a couple questions. The first question, if a motivated seller in your market is ready to sell, who will they call? The second question, is there a go-to person in your market as the house buyer? As you listen to this episode, our guest gives a lot of incredibly valuable nuggets on how he positioned himself as a go-to expert in his market. This is something you most definitely want and need to do in order to be, one, the most profitable, and two, to have long-term staying power in business. If you haven't already grabbed a copy of my book, be sure to today. You can grab it from Amazon. More leads, more deals, more profits.
Calling all real estate investors. Are you ready to get off the real estate income roller coaster and learn the proven lead generation strategies the experts are using to consistently generate profitable real estate deals? Then you're in the right place. This is More Leads, More Deals, More Profits with your host, Mark Lane. Let's get started.
All right, welcome back. Super pumped today. I've got a guest on the show that's going to share some different secrets he's used over the years to build a very strong referral-based business. He's putting together some monster deals, six-figure type deals on a consistent basis. So, Jeremiah, I'm super excited to have you on here. Anxious to have you share with us everything that you know.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. All right. Well, if you can just take it away, tell us a little bit about how long, when you got started in the business, and kind of how and what got you started.
So it was around 2015. My daughter at that point was about maybe 6-7 months old, and I had made the decision. So it was late 2015 that I had made the decision that I, at the very least, was going to start fixing and flipping homes. I had grown up in construction with my dad. I was always interested in real estate, and I was going to start fixing and flipping homes to bring in maybe extra income, provide me a little bit of flexibility. I was at a job that I really didn't like. I've mentioned this on a few podcasts before. It was a horrible organization, and I was very, very, very unhappy there. And so I said, well, at the very least, if I got to stick it out at this place, I want the opportunity to make more money, and I think real estate could do that. And over 2+ years of doing it, part-time at the job that I had, I made the decision to go all in on it full-time.
How old were you when you started that?
I'm sorry?
Started into it. I said, how old were you when you started into it as kind of more of a side gig? How old were you?
So I'll be 40 in April. So I was about 30 at the time. So okay. I always joked. I spent my 30s kind of, building out my fix and flip business,
Yeah.
And I'm happy. And, if you would have tell me now at the end of, my 30-year run, this is what it would look like, I'd be pretty happy.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I bet you would. Okay. All right. So you were into it for a couple years before you really went full time. Mm-hmm. What was the push that pushed you in full time? Was it simply just you saw the numbers and you said, I can't not
No,
do
it
this,
just got to the point I couldn't take being where I was anymore. During that time, so like I said, my daughter was about 6 months old. About a year and a half later, my son came. A year and a half later, my son came. And then shortly thereafter, actually, my wife became pregnant with my third son, which was our last child. And so that was in like 2018. We realized this is our last child that we're going to have. It was a lot for her to manage. She was working full-time. I was working full-time. We had a nanny. We were trying to make it work. That coupled with just the situation at where I was, the organization I was with, was just becoming more and more toxic. And so I was like, I have to make a move. It was right around the time where, at least in my market, there was a lot of bank-owned properties. You could toss a rock and find something that, you could probably make money with flipping. And what happened is it was really the tail end of that period. So I had kind of missed the run up on that. And I found myself getting outbid like crazy on bank-owned homes and people way overpaying. The first couple of homes that I did that I fixed and flipped were bank-owned homes.
Yeah.
And so I actually heard it from another investor. I was Tom Caffarella out of Boston. He had joked one time, like on a podcast, I think it was on like a Carrot podcast with Trevor, the CEO of Carrot, where he's like,
Okay.
you're not in the real estate business, you're in the marketing business, and kind of a light bulb
Yeah.
went off in my head at that time. And I was like, wow, I never really thought about it. And I was just starting to do marketing. And so I really put a lot of time and emphasis into that. The nice thing is any money that I was making from my fix and flips, I still had a full-time job to support myself.
Yeah.
And so I was taking that money and rolling it over into different marketing techniques, SEO, pay-per-click, direct mail. And those things were starting to produce on a pretty consistent basis to the point that, within a year of fixing and flipping homes, I felt as though okay, I could do this. This isn't as hard as I thought. You got to have the right people, but getting the
Right.
deals was obviously the challenge. As that
Yep.
started to have some kind of consistency, that coupled with, the changing dynamics of our family and obviously the situation at work, I ultimately decided it was time to move on.
So yeah, it just caused me, hearing your story caused me to think back to where I was when I started, which was, my daughter was a, a toddler coming out of infancy, very young. And like now, again, you're now like 5 years into it. Your kids are still toddler and beyond, do you ever look back and say, man, I can't even imagine myself still working at a job when I now not only have the financial abundance, but I also have all the time freedom to spend with my kids? Do you ever
I
find
can't
yourself
even,
thinking
I
back?
don't even know. It's so hard to keep up now.
Right.
Like how, if I had, I don't even know how I do it in a job. And I guess everybody is different. You know what I mean? Maybe certain people, they rely more on their spouse, you know what I mean? And, that person takes care of a majority of it. But, I'm really involved with my kids, you know what I
Right.
mean?
Yeah, that's what I'm
So,
saying is there's so much by having, a full-time job. I know like the job I worked at before I got into real estate, it was almost always 60 hours a week or more. And, I think of how much time I would have missed out on with my daughter had I stayed in that job.
yeah.
And so like sounds like similar to you. That was my major decision. It wasn't really like I want to try to make $1 million a year. It was I want to give my family something. I want to be
Yeah.
able to spend time with my family. And so like that, I think that is a bigger driver and it causes us to dig deeper as opposed to just wanting to make money because that's relatively superficial.
Yeah. I mean, and don't get me wrong. I mean, the money that I make in the business allows us to do things, and I don't have to think about, certain luxuries. I mean, it was actually just yesterday my son wanted to do hockey, and my son bounces around to like a lot of different sports, And I was like, all right, you want to do hockey? We'll go get you the gear, right? Like, I didn't think twice about that part of it, and I was like, 2 months he may say I'm not really interested, and I just wasted money. But for another parent, right, like they got to think long and hard about whether they want to invest that. And so, again, having the ability to do that, it all boils down to like the freedom, right? So
Yeah.
it's freedom of
Right.
time, freedom of opportunity,
Right.
and real estate affords you that, both with the time, both with and the money aspect of it. It's not a matter of flying around on private jets and doing
Yeah.
all this crazy stuff and buying $10 million mansions. It's
Right.
but they have the freedom to kind of do what you want when you want with whomever you want. That's what it really boils down to.
It's what everybody wants. Yeah. Okay, great. So all right, so you got your start. You went full time. Tell us how you started to figure out how to do more deals because it sounds like you got in kind of the tail end of the foreclosure crisis, and I know from being like I started marketing I think about 2016 2017, probably heavier
Mhm.
2017, but by 2016 foreclosures were drying up, and we
Yes.
went from buying crazy amount on the MLS to almost instantly nothing.
Yes.
So tell us what happened with you in that scenario in
So
that time
what I
frame.
did was maybe the second or third deal that I did. I didn't make a ton of money on it. I think I made about 10,000, but I took that 10,000 and I put it into a direct mail campaign. Now at the time, I think the deal I did previous to that, I made like 25,000. Was the first deal I did. This I
Okay.
made 10. So I'm kind of thinking, all right, this is normal, right? Like this is what you're gonna make.
Okay.
Well, I did a direct mail campaign and I brought two deals in, and I think they yielded like 35 to 40K each. And I was like, whoa, that's
Yeah.
a lot more.
Yeah.
And so, I put the money into direct mail that started to produce. But obviously, like every marketing channel, it does this. And I was like, all right, well, what's next? And I paid somebody to help rank my website. It was like, okay, great. What's next, right? Optimize the direct mail, and, try to boatload of PPC people till I finally settled on one that started to get
Yeah.
me consistent deals,
Seems
right?
like
You know how that
all of
goes.
us go through that struggle, finding the
Yeah,
right
yeah, yeah.
person.
So there was that. There was Facebook ads, which to this day really has not been that successful. Once in a while, we get something.
Yeah.
And then, as obviously things have grown, I started posting on social media just about me, and I was kind of open about my story, about leaving a job, and my kids and my family, just kind of being real and authentic with people, and that resonated. I started to build a lot of relationships with realtors, and then I just, really decided at some point that, hey, it was going to be more about building an overall brand.
Yeah.
Everyone's always about the KPIs, and I spend X, I get Y, and it got to the point where I was fortunate that I said, okay, well, how can I get myself to a level where, whether it's through networking with realtors, or people that are just looking for like an off-market deal, or an off-market transaction rather, where they want to sell their house, they
Yeah.
think of me, right? Like I just become synonymous with, hey, I'm the guy in that market. And so that's really been, the focus for me.
I think
Is
that
to
I think
have,
that's I think that's such a valuable piece. In my book, I talk about that. Like, we need to become the go-to person. When somebody thinks to themselves, I need to sell my house. Like, who do I go to? And not outside of a realtor, but who do I go to? We need to become that person that everybody knows, or the
yes.
person that whoever they're going to talk to, they know us, right? And so part of that is building a huge referral network, to where, if your motivated seller is going to, whoever that professional is, that person knows you. And if you can build that, you can get an almost unlimited amount of deals. And it sounds like that's kind of what you did. You became the go-to person, the market expert.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, there's other people in our market too that certainly compete, but we've really tried to kind of build a strong brand for our county, and I try to be as relatable as I can. And again, we run television ads. We do all sorts of branding type elements that even on a subconscious basis, could be diner placemats, bus stop signs, billboards, things of that nature, where people drive by, they see me,
Yeah.
and they might have just seen my television ad, they see me again on the bus stop, just kind of reinforcing it. But you have to be willing to put aside an ROI on that and just say, like, hey, this is a very much a long-term play that I'm going to make, because it's just going to set me aside. I'm not going to really see a return, and I may not even be able to calculate that return. And the only
Yeah.
way I'm going to really know it's working is that more people are calling me and nobody
Yeah.
else.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, and so for the listener's sake, I want to mention this because what you're talking about is more so advertising, right? There's a big difference between advertising and direct response marketing. So almost all marketing we do, I would say for the most part, is direct response marketing. That's direct mails, PPC. That's anything where you're going to spend money and you're going to be able to have a measurable response within a month. Whereas advertising, and which it can also be part of branding, it doesn't always have that element with it. So sometimes you're saying, like, I want everybody to know who I am, and I'm willing to commit X amount to that cause, to that mission, right?
Correct.
Okay. So the referral side is so big. Can you break that down for us, just like a little bit deeper, as far as any strategy that went into that, any professionals, realtors, probate attorneys, like whatever it is, like how you decided to kind of start dissecting that or digging deeper into that part of your system.
Well, I mean, first and foremost, you have to put yourself out there, right? I mean, social media, Facebook, Instagram, all those things. I mean, even now, my social media and my online presence is not even where I want it to be, right? So
Right.
doubling down on that, I've done it, myself, kind of slow and steady over the years, but I want to see that grow drastically,
Right.
right? And so that's a big part of it. I think it's also, a lot of it has to do with the end product that we put on too.
Okay.
So when you're selling homes, we're not perfect, rehabbing homes is hard, and it's a house. It's like a human being. Anything can go wrong at any time, whether it's brand new or been around for 100 years. Things happen, right? We've always tried to do the right thing. We're not pushovers, but we'll make sure that, if there's something that needs to be addressed and it's our responsibility, we'll do it, right?
Yeah.
And I think attorneys see that, other realtors see that, they see the
Yeah.
end product that you're putting on. They're like, I like this guy. I just want to be associated with him. And so people see that we do the right thing. We're direct buyers on all our deals. We're not wholesaling them. Once in a while it might make sense, but we've typically, we'll have consent from the seller to do that. And because we're an attorney state, people see that we're, the attorney for that seller. When it's time to go and they want to close, we're lined up. We have a big source of private money, so it's very easy for me to just make a call and have the money, the next day. I'm
Yeah.
not waiting on hard money or inspections or appraisals. And so I would say, to answer your question, having a smooth, well-run business, people recognize that. All the trades see that. You know what I mean?
Right.
Attorneys, title companies, inspectors, real estate agents, whoever it may be. And so you've built this reputation as being somebody who does what they say they'll do. There's a lot of people out there that, they claim to be the best. They claim to be, top notch, but when you start getting down into like their business dealings, you start to realize like, they're not as good as maybe they, or as
Yeah.
forthright or let's just say as morally sound as they may make themselves out to be. And, that catches up to you eventually.
Well, so I'm hearing that you're essentially saying dependability, like, the people that are being referred to you, realtors that are seeing your product, like that kind of stuff, where they're saying like, this guy is dependable. We know what we're getting. We know, we have confidence. We can send our clients that way, and everything's going to go well. And I think there's an element that goes with that, which is like being easy to work with. Not strong arming everybody in every different situation, but just being easy to work with for people, I think makes a
Yes.
huge difference.
And it really boils down to, hey, what's fair, right? What's the right thing, and I say, like, we're not pushovers, right? I've had people sometimes, we've done a flip, the buyers move in, something goes wrong that we had nothing to do with, septic tank, goes bad, you know what I mean, on a septic tank that's been there for years, right? Well, you can't expect me to, buy you a new one, you know what I mean? But
Yeah.
by the same token, something goes wrong on something that we did that's new. Yeah, could I tell you, sorry, your problem now? I could, but that's not really the right way to do business. That's going
Yeah.
to bite you long term. So,
Right. Exactly.
we've always made it just, we look at it from a rational standpoint and say, like, if the situation were reversed, what would I expect? You know what I mean? And we just try to do that. And
And
I
and I
think
think
at
there's
the end
another
of the day,
element there where, like, when we're doing pretty darn well in business, right? When get to the point where we're making, multiple six figures, multiple seven figures, and it shouldn't. I don't know if it should necessarily be this way, but we recognize that most people that are buying houses from us, they're putting everything they have into the house, or most of it, and they don't have tons of extra money. And so when we look at that and say, that extra $2,000 repair, whatever it might be, is relatively insignificant for us as the business, but it's a lot for them. And so I think making those decisions to fix those types of problems that come up is the right thing to do. And it does come back to us.
yeah,
It does work in our favor.
agreed.
And there's a lot of people that won't do that. And so when you have the willingness to do it, it does set you apart. Okay, so Jeremiah, tell us a little bit about your numbers. I know you kind of briefly spoke about it, before we started. Some pretty impressive numbers, six-figure type deals. Kind of break that down for us and what that looks like.
Yeah, I mean, so we're fortunate, like I said, we're in a market where there's a lot of demand. Even with high interest rates, there's such little inventory, and the demand is still there that obviously it's pushed the numbers up. Yeah, I mean, a lot of our deals do very, very well. And that's when I think personally for us, because there's a limited amount of deals now to be had, and because it's becoming harder and harder, you need to maximize your profits however way I can. Now, that might mean that I'm not going to get that money, 5, 6 months from now. It could be even longer. We're doing a lot of plays on subdivisions and land development and things
Okay.
that isn't going to pay off for at least another year, if not more. But we're willing to do that because I have a lot of confidence in our market. It's a great place. People want to live here, and there's just not a lot to buy. So I'm
Okay.
very bullish on it. And so that's where a lot of that comes from, is having the money and the resources to take those deals down. We don't have to wholesale things.
Okay.
And we have a good system in place that, even if our contractors are busy, a lot of these houses, we've found, happy mediums where we may not have to do a full rehab. And so we've had our contractors focus on the ones that really, really need a lot of work, and they'll come in and they'll do, very minor repairs on a lot of houses, which helps us keep the price of that house down and keep us
Mhm.
in a price point that there's a ton of people, and we'll see, very high profits as a result, because typically we're getting people to bid very high for those houses.
How do you feel like your numbers and or your business would be different if you were more of a wholesaler? And I ask this because I think a fair majority of the listeners are wholesalers. And so and a lot of the guests I have on are more so wholesalers. So I love having you on as more of a fix and flipper with bigger margins. It's a different play. And I'm going to continue on this for a second, but I like what you said as far as having the resources to take the deals down, to do something different. And not that there's no right or wrong to it, but you're maximizing each deal. And so as a lot of wholesalers, we're just turning and burning, trying to
Yes,
go through a lot of volume, a lot of deals, get that cash quickly. By maximizing the deal, we can turn that 20 or 30,000 into 40 or 60,000 or beyond, which sounds like
exactly.
what you're doing.
Exactly. And to be fair, we underwrite pretty conservatively. And so we look at this and say, can this be a solid fix and flip deal for us? Yes. And I would say the way we kind of look at things is we say, can we lose money on this deal? Right.
Hmm.
And if the answer is it's very unlikely that we could lose money, but there's a decent chance that we may not make a ton, we'll still do the deal, because a lot of times we're pleasantly surprised, right? But so for me, I've always looked at it through the lens of, all right, how can I limit the downside? As long as I don't feel like we're going to lose money on the deal, let's go for it. We might make some, we might do really well. But at the end of the day, that's how we've based it off of. Now, that's based off pretty strict underwriting criteria. So like I said,
Hmm.
we have, obviously, if you're doing enough deals, you're going to lose money here and there. But
Hmm.
we've been able to keep that limited. And I,
Yeah.
I think what that allows us to do is, if we're getting deals based on our underwriting criteria, which obviously includes, potentially a heavy rehab number, that allows me to have good contractors that can go in there, kind of take it hands off, not a lot of my involvement. They go in there, that's standardized, systematized. They do their thing. I don't need the cheapest contractor because I'm, trying to save, tripping over pennies all the time. We're tripping over hundreds to pick up pennies. I'm not doing any of that, right? Like,
Mhm.
they're not the most expensive guys. They're not the cheapest. They're charging, a good price, a fair price, but for that, they're handling most of that. So that
Yeah.
allows me to kind of have a hands-off approach to it all. And again, going back to having private money, having the right contractors, underwriting properly, you add all those things together, coupled with a market where there's still a lot of demand. That's how we've been able to get those numbers. Where we've seen them, where, like I said, many of our deals are doing well in excess of the six figures.
Do you have a minimum profit amount that you'll allow?
On average, it's, if we look at it and say, okay, underwrite, thinking of this deal on a very conservative sale price number, because we don't know how things are going to shake out. I'm very confident about the Long Island real estate market as the years progress, but I could be wrong, right? I'm not going to assume any kind of appreciation into the deal. So a conservative number, and we obviously have what I feel is, rehabbing. We've gotten down to where we can see what it's going to cost, and knowing our contractors can handle it. I would say about 10% the sales price. You know what I mean?
Okay.
But again, if things go wrong, there's enough margin in there that, okay, maybe our profit's zero. But again, that ARV that we think is, 650,000 instead becomes 725,000. And, we've kept our rehab budget relatively within reason to where we thought it would be,
Hmm.
that helps a lot.
Hmm. Okay. So let's kind of change directions and talk a little bit about your lead generation side. So what are you currently doing from a marketing standpoint, if anything?
Yeah, so I mean, we do direct mail, we do pay per click, we do television. None of that stuff is really like a home run. You know what I
Okay.
mean? It produces, it has an ROI, it keeps, I would joke, it kind of keeps, the operational costs paid, right? Um, Really, our approach is, the branding element, that's our long term play, you
Okay.
know?
And so what do you mind me asking? What are you spending on like each of your advertise or your marketing methods, direct mail, Google Ads, TV, like what are you spending on each of those?
Usually 50 to 20,000 per channel.
15, 20 per month, right?
Yeah, per month per channel.
Okay. Okay. That's pretty good. And so, and out of those, you're not making a huge return. You're talking like they're kind of just paying for themselves and
There's an
bringing in some extra.
ROI. So here's the other thing with television, right? TV, I mean, PPC and direct mail, you can gauge, okay, I found you on the, they clicked on our Google ad, they came to our website, we got the deal from that. They got our postcard, they called us, we got the deal from that. TV is a little funny, right? Because a lot of times they, they'll go to your website. You think it's a website lead, but turns out it was they saw you on TV and they decided to go to your website, or they got a piece of mail from you and then they saw you on TV, and then that kind of served as a little bit of a confirmation bias to say, you know what, this is the guy I have to talk to. So TV really has in the way I kind of joke, it does have its own ROI, but it
Hmm.
also puts a little bit of gasoline on those other channels as well.
Yeah.
So it becomes a little harder to quantify that.
Hmm.
But we're okay with that because, like I said, our approach is, branding and, becoming the go-to people in our market. So I don't really necessarily mind that, but TV, you kind of see both. You're like, hey, I saw you on TV. I called you. And I said, you know what? I'm going to work with this guy because I saw him on TV. Then you have other people that said, well, I got your letter, then saw you on TV. So that kind of, where what do you give credit to at that point, right?
Yeah.
You
Right.
can't really give credit to either of them. They both work together. So eventually it becomes this cohesive marketing approach.
Exactly. Yeah.
But again, those, especially with TV, realtors, attorneys, title companies, they're all seeing you on TV, right? And
Yeah.
so you're kind of reinforcing it. So even if I didn't get any deals directly from TV, not that we do, but if I didn't, I know that there's a longer play that is going to serve us well.
Yeah, I think that as well can serve as kind of a branding factor. It has that celebrity type status,
Yes.
that people see and they start to recognize, right? Okay, so what's your branding? What different types of things do you have going into your branding play?
Well, I mean, I think what's really important is to focus on really the needs of the seller because when I started this, my wife didn't understand why anybody would ever sell their house at a discount.
Yeah,
And truth be told, I mean, I don't necessarily wouldn't do that, but I'm in the business of, putting houses on the market and dealing with buyers and their BS. But there's a small, as you know, a small portion of the population that doesn't want to go through that, doesn't want to pay
yeah,
realtors, doesn't want to have buyers jerk them around. They just have too many other things. And I can tell you in New York, real estate transactions are hard. There's too many
yeah,
people with their fingers in the pot. So it's very, very, very difficult. So the benefits of a cash offer, in some ways I kind of laugh because in some of these other markets, things move so quickly. I'm always like, why would anybody even want to do a cash offer listed on the MLS? Because things move so quickly there. It's almost like cash, the way cash operates here. But here in New York, it's so hard to do business. We've made it so easy for sellers. That's really like our pitch that, hey, like selling your house in New York is hard, but You don't have control over the situation. All these people have their, ideas, and they're making a muck of everything. We take all that out. You're back in control. It's your terms. It's your timeline. It's your way. However way you want to do this, we'll do that. You know what I mean? And we've
Hmm.
kind of, given that power back to the seller because, even in a market as such as ours, where the demand is so high and people are willing to pay so much for your home, it comes at a price. It comes at a price because New York buyers are royal pains in the ass, royal pains. And no matter what, they'll take you through the ringer one way or another. And it could be the fact that they, jerk you around on inspection. It takes forever for them to get their shit together to close the loan. It could be a million different things. And like I said, we take all of that out of the picture and we put that power back into the seller's hands.
So it sounds a little bit to me, and this, like, I feel like you could rewrite the chapter out of my book when it comes to branding. But it sounds like you're talking a lot about the customer experience, right? Like, one, understanding your ideal
Yes,
motivated seller, understanding their pain points, what they're going through, and then creating a business and an experience to where when they sell, when they deal with you, you handle and fix all of their problems, right? Like that's
yes,
really what you're doing. And I think that so many of the people in this business look at it so transactional, as just like, I'm going to buy a house, I'm going to flip it, I'm going to make money. Whereas when you can really focus on the seller and their problems and fixing those problems and giving them the best experience along the way, that is why you keep getting referrals.
exactly. And I think that's a big part of it. Everybody that we sell to or buy from that sells to us was very happy with the experience. Like I said, we're ready to go with the money. We're direct buyers. We're not waiting on somebody else. Really what it boils down to is when do you want to close? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, how do you want to do this? You just tell us, and we'll go from there.
So with new people starting and they're wanting to build their business, they're wanting to get their name out there, they're wanting to build their referral system and their brand. What would you say to them? How would you encourage them to get started with that?
Well, I mean, it was a little different for me because I was doing some of your more traditional marketing channels and allowed me to build up money. I would say right now, the best thing that you can do is really network like hell with agents all around.
Mhm.
And then you really have to be able to be willing to broadcast your story and what it is that you're doing and how you're working with people. The more you can kind of put yourself out there as this down to earth, I care about the seller type buyer, and highlight how you've been able to build relationships with other people. Again, the first one's going to be the hardest. Once you get past, that breakthrough element,
Mhm.
um, you're going to start to see a lot more success. But you really need to, I know it sounds cliche, but you really need to be documenting your journey the whole way. And you need to be able to put it out there. I didn't like social media. I kind of laughed at people who were putting
Yeah.
things out there. I felt it was very self serving.
Hmm.
But at the end of the day, and it is, but at the end of the day, it's the only way the world's going to know about you. So
Exactly.
you
It,
just
it
have to
it
do it.
does it can come off different to different people. It's really how they want to perceive you is really what it comes down to,
Yeah.
right? Like, it's all just stuff. It's, we're putting out different things, and that each different individual person that's watching you has their own judgments, their own insecurities, their own thoughts, whatever it is, and they're going to perceive you however they perceive you. But one thing is for sure, that the person that gets the most attention is going to win.
Yes.
And so continuing, and I try to tell this to my coaching students and other people, is like, you guys have got to get out there. Like, everybody needs to know who you are. If
Yes.
if if the sellers don't know you exist, how can they ever do business with you? Right? If the realtors don't know you exist, how can they ever refer you business? So the more people that know you, the better.
Yeah, and like I said, it's hard. I mean, I talked about the cost. Some people don't have 15, $20,000 a month to spend on marketing channel, right? Like when I first
Yeah.
started, I did a 10,000. I took profit from one deal and I put it into a direct marketing campaign at 10,000. I got two deals, 5,000 per deal. I
Right.
don't see numbers like that anymore. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like I wish I did, but I don't. So
Yeah.
with that said, I got onto the direct marketing bandwagon back when it was a little bit cheaper.
Yeah.
But what I did do is at least I documented everything that I was doing. I put it online. I let people know about me.
Hmm. Yeah.
And that started, people have now just kind of continued to bring me deals because I'm
Yeah.
putting myself out there. I talk about myself on a very personal level. I went through a big fitness transformation where, I was like, I don't know, 30, 40% body fat to like 8.7% body fat, and I changed everything. And more people want to do business with me from seeing just that component, right?
Hmm.
Than they
Well,
do
because
just
then at
because,
that point they feel like they're getting to know you, right? It's
yeah,
not just Jeremiah the real estate investor, but it's you on a personal level. So
yeah. And
like
so
that's how they start to connect because they're having those same struggles in their life.
Yeah, and so I'm very honest about the fact that, like, hey, like, I was one time in good shape. I got out of shape. I overate and ballooned up. I didn't recognize myself, and hey, I got myself back on track. And that same person who sees me, it's like, well, I want to do that too. And I just so happened to do real estate, and it just so happened this morning to talk to a seller that wants a cash offer, and that guy over there has been talking about his personal, transformation, fitness transformation. But I also know he happens to do real estate. I want to call him. You know what I mean? So
Yeah. Yeah.
relating on
Yeah.
that level. You have to be a relatable person, and I think I do a good job of that.
Yeah, so I want to like just kind of compound on this regarding telling your story because it just brings something to my mind. I've said this to a couple of my students before that if you don't have the money to get started in marketing, and a lot of people don't, like, yeah, and we know, based off of other episodes, you can get started with a very small niche list for $100, $200. Like you don't
Sure.
have to jump in with 15, 20,000. But if you don't have much to get started, putting yourself out there, like you're talking about, is probably the single best way to start getting attention. And so, like, one way I would suggest it is like if somebody was new, like, go out, start looking at houses because there's really nothing better to do than that anyway. Go out, start looking at houses, get it, like evaluating them, getting yourself familiar with them, and do live videos while you do it. Talk about the video, or talk about what you see, talk about how and why you're evaluating it. And then at the end, make a call to action of, I'm always looking to buy houses. If you have anything you're looking to sell, feel free to hit me up. Like something like that. It starts to register in people's minds after you do it several times of, oh, this guy's active. He's wanting to buy houses. So like that type of stuff on a very consistent basis will start to pull leads.
Exactly.
And it'll pull leads from the people that you want it to pull leads from,
Yeah,
such
yeah, yeah.
as,
It'll bring
like realtors and attorneys and stuff like that. It's going to come from good qualified people.
100%.
Okay. So Jeremiah, we're in here in just a second, but like where are you going from here? Like what's next for you, the next stage of your journey? Where do you see your business going? Tell us a little bit about that.
I see it moving into some larger development type deals within our county. So that's a big part of it. And we're just, we're continuing on a daily basis really to, you know, still spend what we're spending on traditional marketing channels, but really going in heavy on social media, really going in heavy on branding type marketing. Um, Basically willing to set aside a large sum of money to say, okay, let's get our name out there however way I can, and look at ourselves from the standpoint of, no matter where somebody turns, right? Like they've
Mm-hmm.
seen my face somewhere and they know that I'm the guy that buys houses, right? I mean,
Yeah.
and that could be in, smaller areas where price points are, for us, 400,000, and it could be out east in the Hamptons where price points are 3, 4 million. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We're
Yeah.
willing to do both ends of the spectrum, and we're going to get our name out in the county however way we can.
Yeah.
But having that diversity of skill set because we are a very diverse market, my county, in terms of what's available and what you can do.
Yeah.
It's pretty much everything that you can imagine from the most expensive real estate in the country to houses where they're dangerous. They're like danger zones. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
you've
Right.
got it all, and we can do it all. And our
Mm-hmm.
goal is to get that name and that brand out there, and me as the face of that brand, every area, every niche of that county.
Yeah. it's such good information. Listeners, like, listen close to that, because like, he's talking about becoming the market expert. Like, I think, not only I think, every single person that's listening to the show should be trying to do the same thing. That's what all of us should be after. And when you really understand that vision of what that looks like, it will change everything about your business.
Yes.
And so it kind of switches and goes from, like, I'm going to try this piece of marketing, I'm going to try this list, and it's a much bigger approach, and kind of all encompassing. So thank you for sharing that, because that's really, really good.
No problem.
All right, man. I appreciate you being on the show, and looking forward to seeing your journey and staying in touch with you.
Thanks, man. Thanks for having me on. It was a great time.
You bet. Thank you.
This episode is over, but we're not done here. For tons more actionable advice, be sure to subscribe to the podcast so you never miss an episode. Ready to get help from Mark directly? Visit marklaneeducation.com to schedule a consultation and kickstart your lead generation strategies right away. We'll see you next time on More Leads, More Deals, More Profits with Mark Lane.